Hello, and welcome to Very Kimberly, the healed side of codependency. People with a disorganized attachment style basically grow up believing that they had to be completely independent and self reliant in every single way out of survival. They learned very early on that the only way that their needs were guaranteed to be met was if they themselves figured out a way to provide for them. So, from childhood all the way into adulthood, these individuals have another common motto phrase in addition to "it is what it is." And that motto phrase is, "I'll figure it out on my own." And they do. But they do so with that fear being the main motivator because they don't believe they'll survive otherwise. These motto phrases of "it is what it is" and "I'll figure it out on my own" can seem like a form of radical acceptance and independence. And indeed, they are, but of the unhealthy and self destructive kind because it keeps us in a constant state of survival mode. I quickly found a full time job working as an executive assistant at a local speech clinic. But when I would come home after a long day, I would find the girls still in their pajamas, the house a complete mess with absolutely none of the chores done, and Joe still expecting me to make dinner every night. See, Joe had decided to try selling vintage items he would buy at thrift shops on eBay for extra money. So, after I would get home from work, he would retreat into the bedroom where our computer was, leaving me to cook dinner, clean the house, do the laundry, give the girls a bath, and get them ready for bed. But it got to the point where I also had to help him write the eBay listings, take the boxes to be shipped, etc. Joe would come up with various ideas for making money, but every single one of them involved me doing all the work. And with me being away at my job all day long, and him only having to minimally take care of the girls, Joe was also free to nurture his addictions full time. And his weaponized incompetence placed me in a position where I was too busy and exhausted taking on my responsibilities and his that I didn't suspect a thing. Eventually, I did confront Joe and insist that he find a real job. Ellie and Troy had retired by this time, and Ellie had offered to help watch the kids while we were both at work. Joe did manage to get a job, but he also continued to use weaponized incompetence as a way to avoid any household duties or caregiving of the children. Joe still controlled all of the money, and no matter how many raises I received from my job, there never seemed to be enough money for mine or the girls' needs beyond the bare minimum. And I knew that Joe would never allow me to open up my own checking account. So going back to work didn't really help me reclaim any independence like I thought it would. It just placed the burden of responsibility for our entire family squarely on my shoulders alone, because Joe, who was supposed to be the leader and provider of our family, refused to be responsible for anything. See, when a child is given more affirmation of who they are as a person, more validation, and more approval whenever they behave independently, then that independence becomes how the child gauges their own value and worth. It becomes a very large part of how they see their identity. But what happens is, as they grow into adulthood, when this inner child faces things that they cannot do themselves, nor should they be expected to do by themselves, it shatters their self-esteem and their sense of identity. And they will do whatever they have to do, no matter how badly it hurts them, to figure it out on their own. Because if they don't, then they've lost who they think they are as a person. In the beginning, I fawned over Joe to earn his love. But now, I was fawning over him to simply survive. And I had pretended to be this person that I believed Joe accepted, or at the very least tolerated enough not to abuse for so long, that I could no longer see the person I believed I really was on the inside. I knew that I wasn't really the person I pretended to be just to survive my marriage. But that independent identity deep inside that I used to know and believe in was now gone, shattered into a million pieces by my own husband. The identity I believed was rooted in my husband's love, well, I knew that identity was gone, and my heart accepted that because there really was no other choice. It was what it was. But it was my old identity that I believed was rooted in my own abilities and independence that I grieved tremendously. And I wanted so desperately for her to come back because I felt that mine and the girl's survival depended on it. And there was only one person besides my late mother and Miss Elder in 6th grade who ever really saw that person I used to be and believed in her. William. See, when Mom passed away and Joe insisted that we not only take care of Mavis, but adopt her, I got back in touch with William because I knew he was friends with an attorney who handled family law and adoptions. None of the lawyers that I had ever worked with handled that type of law, so I reached out to William for the referral. And at first, I had absolutely no intention of rekindling any type of relationship other than passive friendship. William continued to maintain his position as middleman between me and his friend, the adoption lawyer. But the whole adoption process was taking much longer than I had anticipated. This meant that the line of communication between William and I remained open for a much longer period of time than I had anticipated. And it was during this extended period of time that my mind started to not only see William as an ally who could help the girls and I escape, but I also saw him as someone who could help me see and believe in myself again as a person. I needed my old friend back. I needed that friend who challenged me in ways that made me see the person he saw, the person he believed in, the person my girls needed me to be again, and the person I needed to be again so that we would all be okay. But then my heart also started to question whether or not I had made a mistake by giving up on William in the first place. William, however, had no desire to be that friend anymore. In fact, when we started talking about old times, William began to initiate some very inappropriate conversations. And me, being in full-blown survival mode and absolutely terrified to say no to anyone, went along with it. I remember after that first inappropriate conversation, I bawled my eyes out in the car. I truly did not want to have any type of physical relationship with William or anyone else at that point, and I certainly didn't want to talk about having one. But in my mind, I reasoned that if I continued to have these types of conversations with William, then he would help me. And I also reasoned that since William was miles away in Pennsylvania, I wouldn't be pressured into saying yes when I meant no to anything else that I did not want to do. My heart was also deeply conflicted because part of me wanted so badly to believe that William was the same person I used to know and love. But the more he kept trying to have inappropriate conversations, the more I knew that he had either changed or he was never really that person at all. It was also during this time that I had been secretly scheming with Amber to make an escape with the girls. But if I was going to escape back home to Pennsylvania, I was going to have to put a complete indefinite end to any type of relationship with William. So I sent William an email explaining not only my desire to end the emotional affair, but also my intentions of escaping, but without any knowledge that Joe had installed surveillance software on our computer. I knew Joe had security cameras in the girls' bedrooms and outside, but I had no idea about the surveillance software on our computer or the wiretapping of our house phone. Joe had heard one of my conversations with William and saw in my email to William not so much that I was ending the emotional affair, but my intentions of escaping with girls. Joe went into an absolute rage, throwing things and punching the walls. He threatened that if I took Susie and Kristen to Pennsylvania, he would have me charged with kidnapping. If I tried to divorce him in North Carolina, his parents had already agreed to help him pay to take Susan and Kristen away from me in court. And if I did manage to get custody of, quote, his kids, end quote, he would have nothing left, and he wouldn't be responsible for what he might do. Joe said that he did not care about me or Mavis, just his kids and himself, which only verbalized out loud what I had suspected was in his heart all along. Then when Joe came out of his rage, he asked me, "Do you love him?" And for a brief moment, I pondered that question. Which William? I thought to myself. The William that I knew and loved in the past? Or the William that I wished I had never known? The one that manipulated my desperation into an emotional affair I never wanted. But in my survival mode, I told Joe yes, which was technically true about past William that didn't really exist. But then I told him why. I told him about William seeing me as a person, and that Joe didn't seem to see me at all. I finally poured out of my heart how alone and unseen I had been feeling in our marriage, and how badly I missed my family and wanted to go back home to Pennsylvania. And every bit of that was true. But it was at this point that Joe gave me an ultimatum. Either go to marriage counseling at a Baptist church program of his choosing, or he would do everything in his power to take my children away from me. I still sometimes struggle with the shame of that emotional affair. I knew deep down in my heart that it was wrong, even if I had no real desire or intention of a physical relationship. But as I've said before, desperate people do very desperate things. And when surviving is the only thing your brain and nervous system care about, it's no longer about right or wrong, but about making it through another day. For someone struggling with a disorganized attachment style, it's not simply about solving everyday problems in life. It's about maintaining how we see ourselves. Because without that independence, we see ourselves as nothing. But John 15:5 says, "Yes, I am the vine, you are the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them will produce much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing." We can do nothing. And Galatians 2:20 says, "I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me." So you see, your worth and value and identity is not tied into how much you can do for yourself, but it is tied into what Christ can do through you. And when you remain in him, there's nothing you cannot do that God has called you to do. And because you are a new creation in Christ, crucifying the flesh that seeks glory for itself, whatever you do in this world, it is only by your faith in the one who can do it all, because he loves you. Your worth, your value, your identity come from God through Christ alone. And there is nothing you can or cannot do to change that. Now, that's the right place to say, it is what it is.